right. Here we are, 2 months into Take Courage 143, and I'm live and um, I'm alone. So here we go. I have no guest today, and this episode brings with it my recollection and my memories of Lauren, my daughter, being diagnosed with leukemia. So 18 years ago yesterday, um, on the evening actually of June 3rd that turned into June 4th, I began a journey with my family that was unimaginable. It was a journey we cho- we didn't choose, but it's one that has defined us, transformed us, and taught us the true meaning of courage and love as I sit here today by myself. Um, so today on this episode of Take Courage 143, I commemorate the start of that journey, the 18th anniversary of my daughter Lauren's leukemia diagnosis. And I want to share with you remembering the day, a journey of courage and love with you. While I will not be able to share every detail of it with you today, I would like to shine a light on some of what I learned after hearing the words, Lauren has leukemia. So I have no script today, everyone. So it won't be scripted. And I'm going to attempt to share these details to help you maybe either see yourself in this journey or maybe get some clarity about your life and the challenges you face. So, as I begin to talk about June 3rd becoming June 4th, I've always believed that it was bigger than me. Even today, I believe God has plans for my family and me that are beyond my imagination. So, if I take you back to June 3rd, it was the evening, and my husband had come home from work, and Lauren hadn't been feeling well. She had been to a doctor several times in the past. It had been like the past month or so, and had been on several rounds of antibiotics. But ultimately, she presented with a sore on her bottom. And the way I can describe it is like it looked kind of like something like a pimple that had hardened for the first few days that she had it. But then it later developed into something that looked like black and dark and infected. And there was no real explanation for it. We had been to my dad's pool in his complex Memorial Day weekend, and we had swam in the pool, and she was 16 months old. I remember her floating around in this thing that looked like a turtle, or maybe it was a frog. And it was like there was some net, and she sat in it, and we kind of floated around with her for only, a few minutes. We weren't in the water very long. So then fast forward to this, June 3rd, this evening, Lauren had developed a fever, and she just didn't seem right. She wasn't eating. So when Jeff came home from work, her father, he was concerned that her fever had gotten too high and that we might need to just take her to the emergency room to find out if there was something else going on. And ultimately, this sore on her bottom became so obvious that something was wrong that we needed to get to the bottom of it. So Jeff was on call. He was a resident physician in pathology. He was, in his he was a resident physician, and he was on call. So he wasn't able to go with me to the ER. And I opted to call my father and ask him if he would meet me there, because he lived about 20 miles south of us in Wexford. And we lived in Cranberry Township, Pennsylvania at that time. So we went to the ER, and as we went through the door, it was later in the evening. I was quite tired. I had 2 babies under the age of 2 at the time, and I just thought that we were going to go there and this infection on her bottom would require antibiotics and we'd be able to come home. As time went on and we got more information from the doctors at this local emergency department, we realized that the night was going to get longer than I had ever thought. We saw a doctor at the ER, the local ER, that didn't really have any resolve for us and wasn't able to give her any IV antibiotics or any kind of treatment at that facility. So we were advised to go into Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh to get medical treatment. My dad and I decided to go ahead and go into the city, and so I followed him because he had been living in Pittsburgh longer than I. So I took my car with Lauren and he drove in and I followed him. And when we got to the ER, we were triaged into this small room outside the big metal doors that come before where they bring in patients, by ambulance or, the back treating areas of the ER for patients. And to get to the point, we have to fast forward. We sat there quite a few hours. We arrived there about 7:00 and had several doctors come in and visit and explain different things that might happen throughout the night. But we didn't get blood work or any kind of resolve until early the next morning, which ended up becoming June 4th. And as I recall sitting there, I had no idea what was to come. We were looking at the equipment in the room. My dad and I discussed how old and rusty all the drawers were. And this was at the old hospital in Oakland, just for clarification. This isn't the new hospital that's now has been moved. So to Lawrenceville. We're sitting in this, it was, this room, and there's these rusty drawers, and my dad and I are both growing pretty weary. We start to and I'm holding Lauren, and she doesn't have much energy. And of course it's late in the night. She would typically be sleeping anyway. So I just held her and on my lap, and there were just plastic chairs. And honestly, I was like, what are we doing here? Why? I wanted to go home. I felt like we weren't really getting much attention because we weren't urgent. And there are many more children that come in through those doors that need acute care, whether they've been in an accident or other things. So, we were just waiting and being patient, but we were exhausted. And a resident came in and looked at Lauren's sore on her bottom and was very perplexed by it and inquisitive at the same time, and asked me a few questions. And I actually became slightly excited that he wanted to take a sample of this lesion and find out the root of it. So he came in. It was probably about 3:00 in the morning at this point, and so we were on our way. Well, fast forward, he comes back. He had talked to a internal or infectious disease doctor, and this doctor had advised that we get blood work. And so from there, Lauren was awake. she had been prodded with, and now they were going to draw her blood. And um, it was it was a long few hours, let me tell you. So they did get her blood eventually, and they took it back to the lab. And I remember my dad, and I've written this in the book of Love Beyond Scope, my story of all the details of this day. And my dad, I remember him using his fingers and counting 1, 2, 3 hours. If they get the blood, like, how long will it take for us to get results from this blood work? And it came back within a couple of hours. Maybe it was only an hour, because an hour back then felt like eternity. And a doctor came into the room and made my dad and I aware that Lauren was immunosuppressed, and that they needed to redraw her blood. So, and I was like, well, why do you need to redraw the blood? Like, why do you need more blood? Like, to draw blood out of an 16-month-old, wasn't the most pleasant experience. And she was very brave, and she did handle it well at the time. But as a mother, one more pinch, like, didn't make sense at this point to me. So they end up redrawing the blood, and the doctor comes back in, and it wasn't much later, because I think they just put a smear on a slide at this point, and she confirmed that Lauren had leukemia. It was quite the day, and as I recall it, it still chokes me up. But as we continue to travel on this journey, I realized that in hindsight, that there were so many people that came into our lives that I would have never met. And the first wink of this was when we went behind those metal doors and we met the resident from the oncology department at Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh, which at the time was Dr. Tony Graves. He came into the room. Jeff, at this point, had come down to the hospital and was with me. And I began to realize that there was no such thing as coincidence, because Tony, Dr. Graves, asked us if we knew who we wanted to be our oncologist. And I told him I had spoken on the phone with a doctor who was an oncologist here at Children's, but I couldn't put it in my mind and place in my mind that he was part of this children's oncology team. And so I'd spoken with Dr. Ritchie almost probably a year to the day before we found out Lauren was sick. And he was a friend of our pediatrician in Vermont, and I had his name tucked behind my driver's license on a Post-it note for a long time, or at least a year. And I just, in spite of all the hurt and the fear and the pain, at that moment, I was like, wow, like, is this where I'm supposed to be? But I still wondered, like, why does this happen to Lauren? And what are we dealing with here? And where is God in this? And some of these questions I could answer like, what is leukemia and what is the treatment for it? But others, like, I couldn't answer, and I I really struggled, and, so that was the beginning, that was in the ER, and the sadness was overwhelming, the grief was overwhelming. um, I wanted answers, like, now, like, I wanted to be able to pick up a phone and be like, "Hey, like, can somebody let me know how this is all gonna turn out? Because this is crazy, like, I am living in something, like, this is a day, like, I didn't wake up thinking I was walking into a child with diagnosed with cancer." And so this brings me to, the floor, and, going up a floor, and we get up to the 8th floor, and we're met by an incredible staff, and, they begin to take Lauren's vitals on the floor, and I start to kinda come to a place of back to reality, 'cause when the doctor told me that Lauren had leukemia, I I felt I began to shake, and I could feel the blood, like, dripping out of my head, which kinda sounds crazy, but that's how it was, and, I went into shock, and they gave me warm blankets, but once we were up on the floor, I kinda came back into, like, out of shock and into reality, and I was surrounded by an incredible group of, um, caregivers, on the team there. And one that I remember in particular, as the beginning, was a PCT named Crystal, and she came in the room, and my husband and I were sitting there with Lauren, and he was making some calls, and, we were just trying to figure out, where we would get our clothes and what was gonna happen next, and who was gonna stay, and, um, so Crystal came in, and she asked, "Can I bring you something to eat or drink?" Which, um, it was just, like, such a kind gesture, and I remember she brought me a ginger ale and some crackers, and she told me, "Lauren is gonna get better, and you guys are gonna go home at some point." And so, I mean, I sat there with, every word that came out of my mouth, I couldn't speak without tears running down my face or, like, my lip quivering. Um, but that was the first act of kindness that I received after getting up to the floor in this new world of ours, um, and then the next thing I'd like to remember from this day, I have a list here, was the first treatment that Lauren would begin would be, um, a blood transfusion. And so, she didn't have very many red blood cells when she was diagnosed, and as you know, red blood cells carry oxygen, and is required for life to function, and life to go on. So another nurse came in and made us aware that Lauren was going to get, a bag of blood. And this was all too, you know, overwhelming for me at the time, I remember. But looking back, all these people were taking action to save Lauren's life, one step at a time. And Nurse Andy, he was an amazing nurse. We saw him many times throughout our journey. He came in, uh, just sharing all the news of things that were good that were happening on 8 North in the oncology unit. Whether it was the snack cart, that there was gonna be a dinner served for Lauren, whether it was that he just had some pre-medication for the blood transfusion, or he just wanted to come in and bring a smile more than anything, and I remember he used to whistle while he worked, which brings back such great memories. And he whistled. He brought a whistle. He brought some music into the room while we were just not knowing what was next. So, and as time went on, and I don't want to talk about all the details, but as time went on, our family began to arrive. Jeff's parents, Jerry and Sandy, arrived first, and as Lauren was getting her blood transfusion, I just remember it like it was yesterday, and I was thinking, I really didn't know the future of our child, and in some ways that day felt like we were mourning her life. But they came in, Jeff's parents came in, and they assured us that they were going to start taking care of things, and that they would make sure that Lauren had clothes to wear other than hospital gowns, and that they would bring us anything that we needed, that we didn't need to leave the hospital. And then, we both, as a family, we began to ask questions like, is this really leukemia? Like, could it be something else? And eventually we realized that it truly was leukemia. It was acute lymphoblastic leukemia, which has a good prognosis and is very treatable. More family came. Jeff's brother, Phil, his sister-in-law, our sister-in-law, Angie, and eventually my mom, and then my brothers over the next few days. But the next amazing part for me in this journey was getting to meet Dr. Ritchie. And Dr. Ritchie is the oncologist who was our primary oncologist and on our team, the head of our team, Lauren's team, the first week. And we began to learn about what treatment looked like. We began to learn about what we would have to do on this journey to get Lauren better. We began to learn about all of the resources and all of the people, doctors, nurses, PAs, everyone that was there to help our child get better. It was like a whole entire team working for her. And so while the details that lead up to me hearing the words Lauren has leukemia are interesting, what is more important are my thoughts that followed. And I asked, why Lauren? How could this happen to a 16-month-old baby? Where is God? And at the time I asked these rhetorical questions out of grief and sadness and disbelief and pain. These questions had to remain unanswered. But within minutes, as I told you in the story, of me asking myself these questions, I was face to face with a resident doctor who understood our path forward, and eventually a whole team of oncologists, right? And I began to ask other questions like, what is leukemia? How do children get leukemia? Is leukemia genetic? And what is the treatment? And some of my questions that day were answered, but others were not. Cancer is, by definition, a disease caused by an uncontrolled division of abnormal cells in the body. And why this happens can be studied, but how to correct it or treat it with therapies is a work in progress. And while there were effective therapies for Lauren's leukemia that led her to ultimately being cured, it was a long road. The road became longer when her older sister was diagnosed with leukemia as well. But I'm going to save that story for September, in a few months from now. So along this road, I met patients with leukemia and other cancers who are not cured. And it is those children and families that continue to inspire me to search. I continue to travel my path. Here I am 18 years later, in hopes that one day I can help make a difference and bring hope to those who need it most. Today, I'm leaving you with this thought. The therapies are continually evolving as researchers learn more about the intricate details of cells and genes. There is a horizon not too far away in which each day men and women rise to the morning sun and work until the sun has set. Their work is born from a passion inside of them that allows them to draw closer to the cure. And Dr. Ritchie once told me that treatment will continue to get better. It takes time. I firmly believe this with all my heart to this day, that treatment is going to get better. The years I spent at Children's will soon be only months or maybe even a week for children in the future. The cancers that are not curable will have more hope, and life will be extended, and possibly their cure is in reach as well. So, as we draw to a close today's episode, I am profoundly reminded of the complexity and depth of the journey. A journey from its very onset promised to be larger than anything I could have ever imagined. I ask you to think about a Bible verse I recently came across from Psalm 119, verse 105. Your word is a lantern to my feet and a light upon my path. This happens to be the longest psalm, but also the longest chapter of the Bible. And if you dive deeper into it than I will today, but it's very interesting. I ask you that if you have a chance, it's worth diving deeper into. But the poet in this psalm is surrounded by darkness. And why would he need a lamp to guide his feet? Because he cannot see beyond his next step. He cannot see the light ahead of him, the light at the end of the road. That's why the poet says, I am deeply troubled, because he can only see the next step. He has to trust God in every step he takes. So to those of you listening who find yourselves in the midst of your own battles after the day, grappling with the enormity of grief and the unknowns, I want to acknowledge the immense strength it takes to walk this path. It's a journey that none of us would choose, yet within it, there are moments of light and unexpected blessings. The topic we've discussed today, from arriving at 8 North and the undergoing a life-saving blood transfusion to the pivotal moments of surrender and solace found in God's guidance, each highlight a segment of my journey that has profoundly shaped my family and me. It's essential to recognize each journey is unique, and the light guiding each one of us one step at a time may manifest differently for everyone. If you're feeling overwhelmed, unable to grasp the big picture, or can't find that lamplight amidst the darkness, it's okay. Your feelings are valid, your grief is real, and your journey is significant. The uncertainty can be overwhelming and the questions may seem endless. Still, I encourage you to hold on to whatever fragments of hope you can find, to seek peace in the small moments, to open your heart to simple joys in each day, and to embrace love in its many forms. As we part ways today, my hope is that my story has resonated with you, not as a roadmap or something as a directive, but just as an example or a beacon of understanding, a testament that you are not alone in your struggles, fears, or tears. In sharing the day, which all of our the days may look different. I've had, and maybe we have several. I've had several over my lifetime, and I've shared one of them with you today. And my aim was to extend, my heart and my hand to let you know that you're not alone and to share our light with those of you who might need it. And in your moments of doubt, remember, it's in the simplest steps, taken one day at a time, that leads us to the greater understanding of life and love. Allow yourself grace to navigate. I surely had to allow myself a ton of grace. There were many times when, I just couldn't do it. And I had to just allow everyone and God to pick up my pieces. And know that despite the challenges, there are communities and hearts out there ready to support you, to listen, and to walk alongside of you. I just want to thank you all for listening to my story today. If you'd like to read about my story, it's in my book, Love Beyond Scope. It's available on Amazon.com. And it shows more of my faith journey and my struggle and my coming back. And I'm still walking that path, and I'm still looking for the light to guide me each day, one step at a time. So may you find your lamplight, even in the darkest times, guiding you gently towards hope, peace, joy, and everlasting love. And this concludes. So at the end of Take Courage 143. Take courage. I love you.